his revisions to the charter, and also had the proposed, I think Christie sent out the proposed agenda. I don't believe it was in the same email, it was a little bit earlier. So let me tell you what my thoughts are, and then I'll open up the floor. My thoughts are that I'd like everybody to take a good look at what Dale has revised, and then send me your thoughts. All right. And then if there's an issue that you want to explore, we can talk about it tonight, or we could talk about it next time. Really, it's up to you. I thought what he had proposed kind of captured the spirit of what we were trying to achieve. I didn't have any philosophical differences with what he had drafted, and there was attached to his email was kind of a back and forth that he and I had on a couple of issues. But that's the way I'd like to do things. But again, I also want to make sure that I give everybody the opportunity to talk. So if you feel strongly about something, or you feel that something's not quite correct with what Dale had drafted or what we had talked about previously, absolutely, the floor is yours, and feel free to address it. I will say, just as an aside, Justin Herman cannot join us tonight. He ran into an emergency work conflict, but so he has promised to find me to give me his thoughts. So let me do this. Let me open the floor and see, is there anything about what Dale has said to us that causes anybody or addresses an issue that anyone would like to address? And then we'll move on to the rest of the agenda.
This is Emily. I'm thinking out loud. I do believe there was some discussion, and I'm not quite sure sort of where it left off, and I'm trying to figure it out because I have several emails from different Dales apparently in my inbox. But the one concern I had was the idea that we all sort of felt that the natural and appropriate choice for replacement for the mayor would be the president of council. And it sounded like Dale had some concern about whether or not we could sort of make that blanket statement. Am I right about that? And if so, did you have thoughts about that? Or, I mean, we could always think about it offline too, but.
No, I think, Emily, well, first of all, if anyone wants to add to Emily, I don't want to, feel free to pipe in. Your thoughts are appreciated. Catherine refuses to grace us with her video tonight, but we expect her
She's too beautiful.
Yeah, that's right.
Problem. I've always told it to her. I'm like, I can't even stand it. It's a problem. Can't concentrate. So I told her to shut off the video this time. So
yeah, my wife has never said that to me. So
my husband has not said to me either. So
right,
Emily is better than my husband there.
Fair enough.
That's why we're together, Catherine. That's why we're together.
So I think your recollection, I believe, is correct, Emily. And I was looking for the exchange I had back and forth with Dale, and I think the way
I just found it.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah. The way I think we came to a conclusion was that we didn't want to be in a position where you can't make somebody do something, I guess is my point. Like, I understand it's part of the, we would hope that if you wanted to be the president of council, it would be the tacit understanding that, hey, you gotta do the job if something bad happens to the mayor, right? But we can't really make somebody do that. So I think the way we defaulted and what was my suggestion was, let's not wait 2 years. If somebody refuses to take that position, then we're going to hold a special election in under 120 days. And there's two things that people should know. I mean, one, that would be a financial burden on the community, not a big one, but it's like $12,000. And then secondly, we would hope that if somebody is serious about, if you're going to become the president of council, it's with the expectation you're going to have that job, right? And then the last point was, we didn't want to get in a situation where, the will of the voters was frustrated. Say hypothetically, somebody runs for mayor knowing that they're gonna drop out, and there's some backroom deal that elevates the president of council to a 2-year term. In my mind, requiring this kind of special election in this very rare circumstance would protect the interest of the voter, and that nobody could really thwart the democratic process, because there's ultimately going to be, if this rare scenario should occur, there's automatically a special election that has to be called within 120 days. Did that answer your question, Emily?
I think so. Are we still saying that the president of council would be asked to step into the role
Yes,
for those days? Okay,
yes,
okay.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
And I also wonder, oh, go ahead.
no, and where it would become an issue is if the president of council steps in, then you hold the position. The way I read it is up to 2 years. If the president of council refuses to do it, well, I got to go back and check. But either way, I think there's a special election. I'm starting to talk myself out of what I just said. So I guess my point is everyone take a good look at that and make sure that it's clear on what the process is going to be. The intention is, and I'm struggling to find the email too, is the intention is to make sure. Let me see.
I did find it, so I can pass it. But
Yeah,
basically,
go
I
ahead.
can say, it says,
Yeah,
there's a discussion of the language. It says if a mayor-elect fails to qualify for office,
right.
a vacancy shall be deemed to exist, and the president of council elected at the organizational meeting following such regular municipal election shall become mayor for that portion of the term as provided above. The election for mayor for the balance of the remaining term, when the office of mayor becomes vacant, shall be held at the next general election, which is more than 120 days after the office of mayor becomes vacant.
right.
And then there's a break. Somebody else says, if the mayor-elect fails to qualify for office, we should consider having a special election rather than moving the president of council into the mayor's office for 2 years.
Yep.
And then we were talking about the unlikeliness to happen. And if we were to do that, a special election, would we want to do it within 120 days? And that it would probably cost about $12,000. The caveat, or not the caveat, the corollary, I guess I would bring up would be, so we say we cannot make anybody do anything. And of course, I'm not advocating that we make people do things, but in the charter itself, that's what we're discussing is
Yep.
what the charter says. And I wonder that whether we could put into the language related to council, related to the president of council, that the person would be willing and prepared to step into the office of mayor in the event of a vacancy. And then I don't want to say that we force anybody to do anything, but that
No,
it's very
sure.
clear that that's a potential outcome for that person.
No,
And
I think Emily, what you're saying is maybe in the council charter, there should be at least a recording that identifies that expectation that if you elevate to the president of council, that you are the mayor if something should happen to the mayor, and just somewhere on record indicating that that's the belief and the expectation of the voters, for lack of a better phrase. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah, it seems to me to be the Band-Aid for that problem of this person has to step into the mayoral position and we're not sure, if they'd want it. Well, if they will understand at that point by being elected to president of council that that's part of that they're part of the chain of succession, rather than thinking like this is a big shock and imposition.
Correct. No, what I would suggest is I think that's a great suggestion. Take a look at the charter if you can figure out where to work that language in. Even if you have to drop a footnote or something, then I think that's an excellent change. Ann or Catherine, do you have any thoughts on this?
I don't have anything to add.
No, I'm in agreement.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it is so unlikely to happen, but I think it makes sense since we know it's a loophole, we should do it. But I absolutely think that the right path is what we're going, is having the expectation the president will take over and try to save us some money if we can, at least for the rest of the term. And then if we can't, then of course, we're not going to force anybody, because I don't want the alternative to be that, if the president doesn't do it, then they have to resign, because then we have 2 open positions. We don't want that either. But
Right.
I think if we at least have an expectation, at least then it has to get voted on if they choose not to do it. There's some sort of other path forward.
Yeah, no,
And to be honest,
go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
No, you're up. Fire away.
Well, I was going to say, I can't imagine a scenario in which a village council president, because maybe I'm giving them all too much credit, but I know our current village council president is amazing, and she would pretty much do what we needed from her. So I think that that's, sort of the reason people are elected to village council president is because they have leadership characteristics and they are willing to serve in a leadership manner. And I can't imagine I honestly can't imagine any of them saying, no, that's too much work or something like that. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe I'm wrong. I could be wrong, but it seems almost as unlikely an eventuality that the president of council would reject the mayorship in a position where we needed it, and we were trying to save money as a village. Like, it seems like that would be completely in line with their goals.
The only thing I could think of is that it's not so much like, you know, fine, like, let's use the current example, like if something happens with the mayor and Erin steps in and then her family needs to move, like if that all
Yeah.
happens, or she's looking to be walking off of council because of something that's happening, you know, that's the kind of stuff too. I think it's good to have a secondary option. Again, unlikely to happen, but
Right. No, I think it's great. Emily, would you mind taking the laboring oar and putting something in the?
Sure.
Excellent.
You know, I love writing this stuff.
Well, I know that, and it's always good when you reaffirm it. Thank you. I'm trying to find, God, I got so many emails, man. Dale was pounding me with emails.
To make it helpful, that email from Dale was 14th at 9:29 a.m.
Excellent.
And you sent it to us. Well, Dale sent it to all of us at 4:09 p.m. yesterday.
Yeah, and in fairness to Dale, that's when I was up to my eyeballs and stuff, and I kind of bombarded him. So to be,
We're
I
all
just
guilty of that.
hit it to the top of your inbox.
Yep. So if I think we've put this one to rest. I'd like to move on to the agenda if that's okay.
I suppose we'll let you.
You know, as I said earlier, I got my COVID shot. If I start speaking in tongues or flipping out, then this is going to be on you guys, right?
Well, I know CPR.
Well,
Which one?
if you were over here, that would be helpful, right? That would be helpful.
If you're comfortable saying on a public forum, which one did you get and when did you get it?
I got.
If you're not, you can tell me.
I got number 2, and I got it an hour ago. So.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
Did you get Pfizer, Moderna? Which one?
I got the Pfizer one. So yeah.
Okay, I got that too, and I was not feeling well for like 3 days, but not terrible. Just like not great. Tylenol, ibuprofen, because everything kind of hurts, but I can't explain it.
That was me after
good
number
luck.
1. So I'm hopeful that number 2 will go much smoother. So hey, getting to our agenda. Look, there's a couple things on there, some of which we're not going to get to tonight for reasons I'll explain momentarily. But the next topic was discuss qualifications for finance director. And at the last meeting we said, look, this would be a dedicated issue. And we would talk about, Dale has inserted some language. I think he reads our agendas and tries to preempt any thoughts we might have to move these things along. So the floor is open to whomever would like to address qualifications for finance director.
John, I have a quick comment, if I could.
Sure.
I had spoke to Dale a little bit this afternoon about a few things regarding the qualifications, and he had sent out a late email. I just saw it before the start of this meeting with a couple options on what I talked about with him as far as like years of experience and just clarifying one point, very minor changes. But I'm not sure I have a chance to see if that email went to everybody or not.
I have not gotten it. So
okay.
No, I've not seen it.
I'll be looking at that in the morning, and I'll make sure that I get that back to you and to him, with a little bit of insight on that, just so we're not getting, I just want to make sure we weren't too restrictive. I think we had one of the suggested passages was minimum 6 years of experience. Dale suggested maybe moving that back to 3. I have to take a look at what he had proposed.
Sure.
So I wanted to make sure we had enough flexibility to hire and recruit the right person for what we're looking for. We haven't had any real specific qualifications before, and Dale said that he suggested these based on some of the other charges that he had read and thought it might be a good idea to add. So I just didn't want to be too restrictive with what we propose, but also make sure that we can recruit somebody highly qualified for that position.
Sure. So let me start with, go ahead, Emily.
Oh no, you go ahead.
No, your hand was up. So if you blink, you get called on here.
Right. First of all, I wanted to say that I know that Anne said that she had some thoughts about this last meeting, and I was looking forward to hearing her thoughts. But I also agree with Rob, and I gave this a lot of thought the last couple of days, and I read a couple of job descriptions for finance directors, and I thought about my experience sort of I worked in a law department in Garfield Heights for when I was in law school, and I thought about sort of like, my experience with hiring processes and being, a public servant and all those things. And ultimately, the question I kept coming away with was, is this an actual issue that we should use the charter to fix? Because if it is not, if we haven't had a situation in which the finance director has been able to be completely incompetent in recent memory, or even, in memory, then I don't know that this is appropriate place to put such restrictions, basically to put a job description in somebody who is theoretically serving at the pleasure of the mayor, if I understand correctly. Like, they're not an elected person, they're appointed. So I would hate to tie the hands of the mayor, both in good ways and bad ways, but in the hiring process, if they find somebody who has exceptional qualifications, but doesn't necessarily meet a rubric that we set out, because there are plenty of candidates. A great example, actually, I'm not trying to just constantly talk about how great Erin is here, our council president, but Erin she is not a lawyer, and I am. And when we have discussions, she is full of amazing insights about policy and law and the way statute. So there are people that don't necessarily they may be too smart to get the brand of CPA or whatever, or lawyer in my case. But I guess my point is that there are a lot of people that have qualifications that may be exceptionally qualified, but don't necessarily meet the job description as we might read it. And then I also, in the descriptions I read, a lot of the things that were saying things like suggested or ideal qualifications, and there were no like mandatory requirements in a lot of these postings that I read for these directors of finance. And I thought that's indicative of the fact that the mayor should have some flexibility, and the mayor is ultimately accountable for who they hire. So they're responsible for ensuring that there's a qualified candidate in there. And again, I'm not trying to advocate for no rules, but I'm just saying that we're not putting a lot of job descriptions in the charter. I know I just suggested that we add one to the council president, but ultimately we're not saying this person needs to have this, like the administrator needs to have this. We're not laying that all out. We're leaving a lot sort of to be filled out by those we elect. And I do think that that's I think it's maybe a little bit inappropriate for us to decide at this juncture what makes a qualified finance director. And I'm of course open to dispute or other opinions. This is just the conclusion I came to wrestling with it over the last couple of days.
So Anne had some thoughts, but I'll tell you, I'm going to push back too. But I'm going to yield the floor to Anne if she'd like to go first.
Well, my initial thought was that I was surprised that there wasn't a job description, or our qualifications weren't listed. I can't find that email that Dale sent that had the different village charters in it, but I did print off charters for Hudson and Moreland Hills. And interestingly, they do not list qualifications for their directors of finance either. But I like the point that Emily is making. I guess my expectation was that, how you have, is it just based, should the nomination or should the appointed person be just based on somebody that the mayor likes, or should there be specific qualifications? Accounting experience in finance. And just understanding finance. I think of the president of the school board, Phil Rankin, who's in private equity, and that's the kind of guy you want managing your tax dollars for your school system. Maybe that's a broader scope, but I guess I just don't know why you wouldn't want to list some type of qualification for somebody that's the director of finance. And perhaps I just don't have a good enough concept of the responsibilities.
So are you finished, Ann?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, Catherine, if you have something, go ahead. Otherwise, I'll pipe up.
Yeah, so I kind of fall a little bit in the middle, I guess, because I do think that because it's an appointed position, there needs to be some accountability in here. Because while we have been blessed to have good elected officials who do not abuse their power, we know full well that it does get abused. And so if we don't have something in here, I worry that maybe down the road, someone who becomes mayor decides, I'm going to give this job to my kid, I'm going to give this job to my friend because they need something to do and they're not qualified at all, or even there could be something terribly nefarious about it. And I am a little concerned that there's really nothing like that in here. But at the same time, I struggled with this too about like, what do we say? Because, my resume looked nothing like it should have when I got my first job. And I know a lot of millennials are going to be the same way. And I don't want, and yes, I'm a millennial and I fully own that.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you're going to admit it. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. And I don't want there to be a situation where, as Emily kind of pointed out, that someone doesn't tick the right box, but they're the right candidate and we don't have that flexibility. And I also don't want to have to update this charter in 3 years because credentialing of financial people is different. But I hadn't thought about what Emily said, and I kind of like that idea of maybe we have just some aspirational things, like some suggested criteria. But what I had come down with was whoever they appoint has to be reasonably approved by council, because at least it will back check this is a terrible person who has no business having this job.
Right.
That's in
But
there.
no, well, there we go. Never mind.
So, all right, Catherine, I don't want to speak over you. Are you finished?
I'm done.
All right. So, Emily, this was like, I never thought of what you had just advocated for. I find it it is an interesting and compelling argument. I will say I'm leaning towards disagreeing with you, and I'm going to say for two reasons why. The first is I have, my practice is white collar defense, right? And I got my start in this years ago when nepotism reigned over at Cuyahoga County and people got hired who had good last names and zero qualifications, and disaster ensued, right? And so to me, what we're putting in there or advocating for is really what I would call a floor. That, look, this is somebody that, and look, every one of us knows the person who has no college degree, but is smart as a whip and is a self-made person and is an inspiration to us all. But since we're dealing with the public trust here, to me, I think at least advocating for a floor, saying, look, we ought to have somebody here and we feel strong enough about this to include it in the charter is worth considering. And I'm leaning towards Ann. And the second reason is I don't think we should be in the business of defining for the mayor or council who they should hire and what those qualifications should be, with the exception of finance director, because that's one, if you screw it up, there's no easy recovery, right? I mean, if somebody gets in there who's a thief or is an idiot, then I mean the effects that they could have on the community could be absolutely draconian. And look, I don't know what our insurance policies provide for, but I think if the mayor appoints someone who's really bad at what they do for whatever reason, I don't know that there's going to be a lot of recourse there. So I guess I'm leaning towards the Ann camp right now, not having made a final decision. But I'll give you, that's a great argument you made, and I had not thought of it in those terms.
Yeah, me neither.
So I guess what I'm telling you is I want to think about it. I don't know if we're going to make any decisions.
No, it's worth.
Yeah,
I am with you. My initial impression was, of course, we want somebody who has credentials, right,
Sure.
in this role. And then I started thinking. Actually, one of the things that prompted my thought was, I was trying to define what a tax attorney was with a friend of mine who's a CPA and attorney. And he said, I'm not a tax attorney though. And I said, Well, then what is a tax attorney?
No.
Like, you have to
No,
have
I've
an
run
LLM?
in, no, I've run into that
or what if-
scenario where CPAs are like, hey,
Right.
man, all I do is accounting. I don't do taxes. Right.
Right. Exactly. So especially in the finance world, because I do consumer finance compliance. In the finance world, it's so nuanced. And to Catherine's point, the credentials may shift. And I'm just concerned that honestly, that I wouldn't even know. I had to read job descriptions to figure out what people were expecting out of this role as far as credentials, because that was my sort of, okay, so what would we be requiring? Would we be requiring a 4-year college with a degree in accounting or business? Or what if they got a degree in economics? Like, what would be acceptable for this role? And then, how much experience is correct and how much, and
No, see,
yeah.
No, that makes sense. I guess where I'm at mentally, and frankly, this just jumped in my, where I'm at is not what do you need, but my question is, well, what does the job require, right? If you're going to do it correctly, what are those basic skills you're going to need to possess? So that's where my mind is.
Yes, and some of the descriptions I've read were very focused on the duties and responsibilities. And then when they came down to recruitment and selection guidelines or desirable education and experiences, and I'll send you a couple of samples if I can find them. But they weren't concrete requirements. They still had that flexibility. And I also was like sort of in brainstorming, sort of, what might we want to add to the charter if there's something that should be added or taken away. I was thinking, ultimately, despite my urge to put everything that would make the world a better place into the charter, I realized that sort of, at least based on the things I've read, that the charter is something that you really have to sort of remember that it's the framework rather than the guts. And so I'm thinking of this as the guts, So for what but by the way, I don't discount what you're saying, Anne and John. I think you're both absolutely correct in that it is a key part. And if the charter didn't explicitly say that the council also had to approve the choice, I would feel very differently. But I feel like this person it's kind of like any of the positions, like we just chose a superintendent. I don't know if there were any discrete requirements when they did that search, but ultimately they did choose somebody who had superintendent experience. But among the finalists, there were many that didn't have superintendent experience, and they had different levels of experience. And if I understand correctly, Bob Hunt did not come to our school district with superintendent experience. So I could be wrong about that, but
I think he was.
Go ahead.
I think he was the assistant superintendent in Kenston before he came here. I think.
Okay.
He was in Chagrin, went to Kenston, then came back to Chagrin.
No, but
point well taken.
Got it.
No,
So,
but I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, so I guess.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, that's. I guess I.
I guess, but to me,
killed my point. Beat it to death.
No, I wouldn't say killed. I would say advocated pretty carefully. I guess I see the Hunt description or superintendent is kind of an apples and oranges things, because what we're saying is, look,
you're probably right.
If you're going to step up and be the superintendent of Chagrin, there's no requirement that you would have to be a previous superintendent, because certainly everybody has their first time, right? But there is a requirement that you have to be a teacher and you have to have attended this and have a certain licensure or so forth and so on. So I guess where I'm at is where you started, which was really interesting, is kind of a philosophical question, which is, do we want to wade in and render our thoughts on this or not, right? And that's it, or is it inappropriate? And so, I haven't given much homework in these meetings, but I think the question is for our next meeting, that's going to be the first issue. And then, because my hope is we want to send something to these folks in early May at the latest. So I'd like to draft in the next few weeks kind of a draft report to council, and there will be a few open issues that we'll have to hammer down, and this will be one of them, right? And then,
and just as a corollary, if we are going to do that for this department head, I think we should consider whether or not we think it's appropriate to do it for other department heads. Do you know what I mean?
I do,
like,
but I put finance in its own category, because that is the one that if somebody really blows it, you end up in a I'm trying to think of the name of the
Well, I think of the person who was in the water department, who is now being prosecuted for
Yeah.
stealing.
Right.
Sure.
So, Dale does
John-
have comments, did add edits in his draft as what would be a potential description of the qualifications. I don't know how far you want to take that.
Well, look,
One other thought really
Go
quickly
ahead, please.
is just that, oh, shoot, I think I lost it. Would it be at all comforting and or serve the same purpose if there was a mechanism for removal outside of the mayor? Like if the majority of council agreed
No.
the person was removed from, no?
So no, that does not give me, and I'll tell you why, because to me, that opens up a whole political dynamic, right? Maybe
No, but
that's,
Yeah,
that
you're
is-
probably right.
yeah,
Removal, the removal is part of the charter. The director of finance may be removed from office by the mayor, but such removal shall not take place without the concurrence of a majority of the
Right.
members of council.
all right, there you go.
Yeah, you're right. And it says any vacancy shall be filled by the same procedure. So I mean, honestly, I sort of feel like that's enough vetting because you have a seven-person body that's reviewing potential candidates, or maybe not potential candidates, but you at least have a 7-person elected body on top of an elected mayor who all sort of have skin in the game as far as if they want to keep these roles.
Finding the right person.
And they all, yeah. And so, and I'm not saying, and if there was a recent incident where we had, I mean, you probably, John, have much more familiarity with the nefarious things that people do or do not do.
There's
or
some
accused of.
scoundrels out there.
I'm not
yes.
sure which side you're on, but yeah, I just sort of feel like, there is a vetting process, and I don't know that like I'm qualified to determine what the best director of finance's profile looks like. And I guess that's just where I came down. It's like,
No,
and is
look,
this really,
Emily, I said at the beginning,
I'll
it's
stop.
no, I'm not trying to stop. You raised a really interesting point, something I had not considered. To me, it was like, why wouldn't we do this? Now I'm like, well, that's a good point. So look, again, given the homework here, everybody think about where they come down on that. Let's get this one resolved next.
What
next
are
meeting.
what are the qualifications of our current director of finance?
And I don't have an answer for you.
He's been here.
you mean what they hold? Not,
He's been here in excess of by 28 years or over 30 years. I don't know the exact time he started, but it was been a considerable amount of time.
Yeah.
might be good
So
to
for-
ask him what he thinks.
Yeah.
Answer me specifically. So for context, don't forget, we do have a minor qualification you need to be director of law. Because it says no person shall act unless duly admitted to practice law. We had talked about adding and being in good standing.
Yes.
So maybe we could take a key from that, which is like, that is a bottom of the barrel basic
Right.
requirement. And that
That's
goes
a-
to,
You have to be a
That's
lawyer.
license, isn't it?
no, I understand, but I mean, it's
Yeah.
to be to be admitted to practice law, it requires education, it requires credentialing, it requires licensing. So, I think maybe just using this as a framework, we don't necessarily have to go into you need X number of years of school or X degree or whatever. If we can somehow encapsulate that same kind of concept, just to make sure this person is minimally qualified. So
I think that's
my
a good
point
point,
just being is we do have some other requirements, and like you'll say resume requirements for another directorship in this charter. So
Right.
if we want to maybe not go overboard, we try to frame something that's more like that just makes sure that someone meets the minimum requirements.
I
Now, what those
think it would be
are-
worth looking into.
Problem.
Yeah, it'd be worth looking into whether or not if we do like a little survey, which I will try to do, of directors of finance and figure out, are they all, say, CPAs? Because that's a licensure, right? But the
Yes.
only caveat I have for that is I think you can be a director of finance and have a great understanding of finance and not necessarily be a CPA. Whereas if you are a director of law and you are not a lawyer, that's illegal, basically.
It's a crime. Yes.
So-
It's a crime.
Well,
right.
accounting and finance are different things as well. So,
Right.
yeah.
No, look, that's,
They're- These
these
are
are,
all
look,
such good points, though. Everybody.
no, they are. No, this is a pretty.
That's what makes it hard.
Yeah, right. I mean, I don't think there's a wrong answer. I think
Right.
there's a comfort answer, right?
Right.
In the sense that what do you feel is the right path rather than, worried about screwing something up, because it seems like we have a process in place that's going to account for at least a check and balance on anyone who comes in. Question is, do we want to add to elevate that to make it a little more directional in terms of what we expect as minimal qualifications for this particular office?
I know
Even
I
if
said I
it's
was
just
going to stop, but
bookkeeping.
Rob. Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what I was thinking, is there's plenty of bookkeepers that I know that are extremely intelligent and
Yeah,
have been keeping places running, and they don't
Correct.
have a CPA licensure.
Mhm.
But Rob, I was just thinking about the fact that you said he's been there 28 plus years. That means our finance director has served at the pleasure of many mayors, right?
Correct.
So even though it is a mayoral position and it is a serve at the pleasure of the mayor, it seems to me that at least currently, it's not being used as a political presence.
And in the history of the village that I'm aware of, there's never been any positions that were treated as such. There's always, with all of the statements in the position descriptions in the charter, that all positions are appointed and confirmed by council, and also if they're removed, that has to be, supported by council. I think that's a good check and balance to ensure continuity and professionalism in who you're recruiting and retaining in these positions. So it's worked very smoothly, and this village has that reputation.
Yeah, but like many things in life, I mean, you hope for the best, which we've had an incredible run, but you plan for the worst. So,
Right.
I mean,
That's because we're lawyers. That's why we think that way.
Well, I'm
Right.
a nurse, and
yes,
That's
Yes.
fair. You guys also
love
think
it,
that way.
We're all just trying to keep everybody alive and from hurting themselves, right?
yeah, right. No, but I'm a nurse, and so it's not. I don't have a legal background that you guys do, but I'm all for having. I like things to personally. I like things defined. It leaves out any kind of question or ambiguity. So.
Yeah, look, and look, I'll be along those lines. I view things in terms of risk and potential liability for the village, right? And
Right.
do we have the potential to avoid a potential headache or lawsuit later? And that might be overstating the case, but that's just where my analysis comes from.
Well, but unfortunately, I think we've all seen it happen, and so you just protect yourself as best you can against
Fair enough.
any potential issue.
I only have one more thing to say about that,
go ahead, please,
because I think
please.
it's a very valid point, but the immediate thing that sprung to my head is a license does not make you an ethical person, and a license sometimes camouflages.
No question,
right?
Right, but most people to sit for a license do have some sort of character screening, and they also have
They do,
minimum
yeah.
competence. Yeah, no, I
Well,
hear you. It's not, and it's not a look. There is absolutely. Look, there's no question that everybody knows very accomplished people who do not have a CPA license. And I don't think it's required to be an accountant, right? I mean, I hear you. I mean, you've made your point very effectively, and you're giving me stuff to think about.
I think
Also remember in those cases, sorry, go ahead, Ann.
I think in terms of the CPA, those people who are accountants do choose to be CPAs because it adds credibility to your experience. And I think a CPA is a certification and not necessarily a license. I am licensed. I am licensed, so I have to apply to the state. I think for the accountants is just taking the exams and then passing the exams and then renewing based on continuing education.
Yeah,
And I was just going to say, just as a reminder, of course, like we really should be focusing on the absolute basic competency criteria, because whether or not they're going to be good at their job or a good person, all those things will be flushed out when they're approved by council.
Right.
Correct.
Like that's our back check for that stuff. So like the lawyer position, it doesn't even require them to be in good standing, it just requires them to be licensed. So not saying that that's good, but I think we should, regardless of which way we choose to go, if we choose to put in specific standards in here, I think we should resist the urge of shooting for the best possible candidate and making sure that we don't exclude people that otherwise could be qualified and let council and the mayor look through resumes and choose who they think is best once they're actually. But we don't want someone in here who is completely unqualified.
No, and to Emily's point, to a certain degree, by putting in these kinds of standards, we take some of the discretion out of the elected officials, right? Because what you're
Right.
saying is you might find a perfectly suitable candidate that doesn't check one of the 4 boxes, and then all of a sudden, the people we've entrusted with running the village are limited in what they can do. So look, this has been very interesting, but I want to move on to the next point unless somebody has something else they're dying to say. All right, and hearing nothing look, I got a call from Larry Trace, and I'm blank on his last name, who wanted to talk to me about the cemeteries. We have not yet touched base, so this is going to be a tabled item, but he had some thought about the way the cemetery commission ran. And, Rob, did I say his name correctly? Is it
Larry Trace.
Trace? Got it.
He used to be the property manager over at Fed.
At
Oh, okay.
Federated Church, yeah.
Yeah, so he
Yeah.
called me and we have not connected, and I told him I would hear him out. So I'm going to just table this agenda item till the last one. Hopefully we'll talk in the next couple of weeks and hammer that out. Okay. But that's the update. And then the next agenda item was kind of an open item, and that is if there's anything anybody has that they want to address, or any updates on what we've been doing so far, anything they want to address, fire away. Okay, that was a dramatic pause.
I can-
Oh, okay.
I'll really quick. Sorry, of course I have something.
No, go.
I did my computer has frozen up, and of course I had something. But basically, I thought that we have a fairly anemic section about finance and funding, not related to the finance director, but regarding finance. And maybe that is intentional because, again, we're not trying to tie our hands. But I thought that it wasn't as robust as I would expect it to be. So, and of course, seriously, my Chrome has locked up, so I can't pull up the provision. But yeah, so I think that we can I can email everybody about it and sort of just give you a little bit more of my thoughts with a reference point. But that is one area I thought that could be potentially considered for some flesh.
So when you email it, make sure you CC Dale, okay? Because
Will do.
yeah, I mean, the nice thing is he's like a walking encyclopedia of municipal law. So if there's somewhere that he can borrow from some other municipality that would address it, that would, I think, shortcut and save a lot of time and energy and frankly money. So yeah. Anything else, Emily? All right. Let me flip to my agenda here and see what's next on the list here. Miscellaneous. Anything anyone want to bring up that we haven't talked about? All right.
Actually,
Then
I just have,
Go ahead.
I have not gone through the whole length of email chain, but I did see something in here about how we would actually effectuate the change of staggering the
yes,
council seats.
I emailed
Mhm.
Dale about that. So his answer is that you don't need to address that because it can be done by the candidates. And said, in other words, since all the seats are up for the first election for 2 or 4 year terms, each incumbent council member who will run again can decide which seat to run for and how many will think they will run for 2-year terms versus 4-year term. So all we have to do is identify 3 4-year terms, and then people can, indicate I'm going to run for the 4-year term or I'm going to run for the 2-year term, knowing 2 years down the road they'll have to do it again. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And then also understanding that there will be probably less competition for the 2-year terms.
Yes.
So his point was kind of like people will it'll be sort of a market system where it'll sort itself out. And
Yes.
because all of the elections are at the same time, we don't have to set a special schedule to incorporate
Correct.
the tool.
All we have to do is identify 3 seats that will be 4-year terms, and then people can decide whether they want to run for a 2-year term or a 4-year term. That's it. Did that answer your question, Catherine?
Yes, it does.
Also, really quickly, my internet sort of resurrected. It's Article 8, Finances and Taxation, and it's like basically 2 lines, a general provision and then a limitation on the rate of taxation, which is like there is no limit, and that's it. So that's I thought that we should think about that.
Look, your comments are appreciated and welcome. So fire it away. You know, I want to hear what you think. Okay, well, look, not hearing anything else, my intention is to hold the next meeting on the 29th, and we'll go back to 6 o'clock, if that's okay with everybody. And then hopefully before then, I'll have a draft for you to review that kind of identifies what we discussed, where we think, why we think, you know, the revisions are appropriate. And then after that, we would submit that to council. Well, of course, everyone here will see that draft and have the ability to revise. And then after that gets submitted to council. And then last time I did this, I did make like a formal presentation, and hopefully you all will attend too. So if I have to fight my way out of there, at least I've got some backing. And then then we're done, right? So look for an email. It's got a draft. If you have thoughts, and I'm kind of pointing you, Emily, right? I'm really pointing at everybody, but I'm pointing at you.
He always has thoughts.
No, look, fire away, man. I mean, just get them to me so, you know, I can consider them and, you know, maybe suggest language we could do A or B in the body of our report back to the community. And then we'll go from there. Okay. Well, I'm going to end the meeting. Everybody have a nice evening, okay?
It was good seeing you all. This is my social life, so thank you.
And thank you for accommodating my shot. Thank you, okay?
Yeah, I hope you feel well. Hope you
Absolutely.
well after that.
Than's Ann. Thank
We're
you.
invested in your life. So.
Yes.
Again, I know CPR.
Oh, well, I'll email you my address offline, right?
Sure thing. Or a text.
All right, great. Thank you, guys.
Take care.
Good night,
Have a good one, everyone.
Night.
Yeah.
And thank you, Rob, for all your insight.
Oh, thank you much. Appreciate it. Glad to
Yep.
participate.
I could so helpful. Very much. Thanks.